Hi everyone. Today let's look at Australia's first political parties. Australia's colonial parliaments began in the 1850s, but for the first 30 years there were no political parties. Instead of parties, the members of parliament grouped together in loose alliances. Parties did exist in other countries. The Democratic Party in the US is the oldest active political party in the world. It was formed in 1828. By the 1880s, in Australia's colonial parliaments, there was a growing divide between free traders and protectionists. The protectionists supported taxes called tariffs on imported goods to encourage local manufacturing and farming in Australia. The free traders opposed tariffs. In the mid-1880s, free traders won far more votes than protectionists. There's a saying that the winners have parties and the losers have meetings. In this case, the free trade winners had a party and the protectionist losers formed a party. Protectionist organisations held a conference in November 1886 and established Australia's first ever political party, the Protection Union of New South Wales. Leading protectionists included Thomas Werne, Charles Henry, and George Dibbs, who was Premier of New South Wales 3 times between 1885 and 1894. The party would assist protectionist candidates for Parliament, distribute campaign material, collect funds, and establish local branches. The following year, in 1887, the Free Traders created Australia's second ever political party, called the Free Trade Association of New South Wales. The party's leaders were George Reid and William Macmillan. Reid was New South Wales Premier from 1894 to 1899, and also became the 4th Prime Minister of Australia in 1904. Australia's third ever political party was formed in 1891, and it still exists today. It is, of course, the Labor Party. A Labor Party is a political party that has trade unions formally affiliated to it. In the 1850s and the 1860s, skilled tradesmen had begun to form trade unions in the Australian colonies. In New South Wales, the peak body for the trade unions was called the Trades and Labour Council. By 1890, this Labour Council had 53 affiliated unions, with a combined membership of 35,000 workers. New South Wales had the highest levels of union membership in the entire world. In the early 1890s, tens of thousands of Australian trade unionists engaged in a series of great strikes. Here's a cartoon depicting the 1891 shearers' strike from the Illustrated Australian News magazine. At the top is a unionist strike camp. Below that are shearers coming in on horseback. Below that, there are unionists searching a train for non-union workers. And at the bottom is a wool train escorted by police to protect it from the strikers. The strikes ended in massive defeats for the trade unions. The strikers were undermined by unemployed workers who were willing to take the strikers' jobs, and the strikers also faced the power of hostile colonial governments, which jailed strike leaders and used soldiers to break the strikes. The unions decided that if the government was against them, then they would seek to become the government themselves. The Sydney Labor Council officially formed the Labor Party, or the Labor Electoral League as it was first called, in March 1891. It had a detailed policy platform, a network of local branches, and dozens of affiliated trade unions. The Labor Party had a more permanent organisation outside of Parliament than the Free Traders or the Protectionists, because the Labor Party was based on the trade unions. Crucially, the Labor Party had significant power over its politicians. The Labor Party conference and executive established the party's policy platform, and they could expel politicians who didn't follow it. The Labor Party won about a quarter of the seats in the 1891 New South Wales election. Given the success that they'd had in New South Wales, similar Labor parties were soon formed in most of the other Australian colonies. Here's the front cover of the bulletin from the 27th of June 1891. The Labor Party holds the balance of power on the political seesaw between Free Trade leader Henry Parkes on one side and Protectionist leader George Dibbs on the other. In 1910, the New South Wales Labor Party won a majority of seats in the Legislative Assembly and formed the first ever New South Wales Labor government. So what was the ideology of the Labor Party? Some Labor Party members believed in replacing capitalism with some form of socialism, but most party members believed in reforming capitalism. The Labor Party had policies like high minimum wages, public ownership of major resources, and redistribution of wealth through taxation and welfare. The Labor Party was opposed to people of colour and women having jobs. Workers of colour and women would increase the supply of labour and therefore reduce wages. The Labor Party wanted a white Australia, where male breadwinners would provide for their wives and children. Here's a cartoon in a trade union newspaper in 1901. It depicts the bright moon of white Australia shining through the dark clouds labelled Black Labour. Despite the howls of the capitalist wolves who wish to use non-white labour to drive down wages, the bright moon of white Australia shines through. By 1895, the Labor Party had established its essential structure in New South Wales. This structure was soon adopted by Labor parties throughout Australia, and it's remained essentially unchanged to the present. The party was organised primarily at the colony level, and since federation in 1901 at the state and territory level. It is at the state and territory level that a trade union can choose to affiliate with the Labor Party by paying a subscription fee based on the size of its membership. In exchange for the fee, the unions get delegates to the party conference and executive. Labor politicians have to sign a pledge. They promise to vote in Parliament in the way that a majority of their fellow politicians have decided in a caucus meeting beforehand. In signing the pledge, the politicians are also promising to do their best to implement the party's policy platform. The policy platform is created by votes at the party conference, not by the politicians. The conference is made up of delegates from the trade unions and the local branches. In practice, it has often been difficult for the Labor Party to control its politicians, but in extreme cases, the party has asserted its authority and expelled disobedient politicians from the party. The biggest example of that was in 1916, when the Labor Party expelled its Prime Minister Billy Hughes and dozens of other politicians from the party because they supported conscription in World War I, and the Labor Party was firmly opposed to conscription. So to conclude, in 1886, 1887 and 1891, colonial citizens created Australia's first three political parties. The names and ideologies of the parties have changed, but the party system they created continues today. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.